What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of College Football Game Day Live, presented by our sponsors, DraftKings Sportsbook. Create a new DraftKings Sportsbook account today using the promo code CFBPros. Deposit a minimum of $5 and get a free $50 bet. I'm your host, Thor Nystrom, joined as always by my co-host and partner in crime, Mike Farrell of Mike Farrell Sports. Mike, how you doing on this glorious college football Saturday, the last of the regular season?
This is it. I'm good. I mean, yesterday was great. Thursday night was great, but today's the day. I mean, we're going to obviously talk Michigan, Ohio State, and Oregon State, and some of these big rivalry games, but we're also going to make you money with some props.
I love rivalry week, and I can't wait to get into these. We're going to be talking about a bunch of rivalry games today. Over the next 90 minutes, Mike and I are going to dive deep into the college football card. We're going to handicap as many games as we can, give you side picks, total picks, prop picks, the whole gamut, and we will answer your questions as we go through. So if you have any questions about any bets that you're considering making today, type them into the box, and we'll get to them throughout the show. Without any further ado, Mike, let's jump into it for our last college football regular season Saturday of the season. We're going to kick things off today. Noon kickoff. South Carolina coming off one of their biggest regular season wins certainly in recent memory, traveling to Clemson. We have a live line in the market right now of Clemson minus 14.5. Looks like the total's around 53. What's your angle on this game, Mike?
I don't know which team we're going to see. But if you're giving me 2 touchdowns and a hook, I'm going to take a hot South Carolina team against Clemson. Now, obviously, this isn't the defense that South Carolina played last week. That was a porous defense that was finally game planned against properly. The passing lanes down the middle. We saw Alabama do a little bit of this, but not to this surgical precision that Satterfield and Shane Beamer, showed us last week against Tennessee. But the week before, against the Florida team, which we just saw is, kind of average. They couldn't do anything. So I don't know who we're going to see here. But that being said, Clemson's offense doesn't scare me that much. They've still got something to play for. They have an outside chance of getting in the playoffs still. They'll win this football game. But I don't know. Give me the hot Gamecocks 14.5. I'll take that 2 touchdowns and a hook.
I like how you set that up. I see it very similarly. And for those reasons, this is not like I don't have a ticket on this game. It didn't make my column or anything like that. It's just a lean for me. I slightly lean the other way, but I see it very similarly to you. Which of these 2 teams are you going to get? South Carolina last week, they just posterized Tennessee 63-28. They scored on, touchdowns, 9 of their first 10 possessions. You almost wouldn't think that South Carolina could play any better. You'd almost think you're going to have the enormous deflate spot here. But then on the Clemson side, they're playing in the ACC title game next week against North Carolina. This is just a non-conference game for them. Obviously, they're still in the college football playoff and everything like that. You can't lose this game. But, no. This is not a style point situation, I don't think, for Clemson. You just need to win this one, get through to next week, and win that one as well, and then hope things fall right for you. It looks like the good news for South Carolina is it looks like Marshawn Lloyd is going to be back. They had all the running back, they have now for several weeks. Last week, and we've seen this previously as well, but last week, Jaheim Bell, the tight end, he functioned as their lead running back the entire time against Tennessee. They had the Wildcat wide receiver running quarterback. Joyner was mixing in. Another backup receiver was mixing in behind him. But it looks like Marshawn Lloyd's going to come back for this game. Marshawn Lloyd is their best offensive player. It's not Spencer Rattler, despite what you may have thought from last week. But also, talking about, what teams are we going to see? What Spencer Rattler are we going to see? He entered last week with an 8-9 TD-INT ratio. If you took out the Vanderbilt game, it was 5-9 TD-INT ratio for Rattler. Last week, he dropped 6 touchdowns and the 400-plus yards and everything like that on Tennessee with 0 interceptions. Is he going to be the former Spencer Rattler in this game against a really good defense? Is he going to be anywhere near what he was last week? Tennessee has the crappy passing defense. They have a bad secondary. So, it's like, what are you going to get there? Rattler has not been good under pressure this year. He was really good under pressure his first year at Oklahoma, the first year he started. That's why people started to throw out like the premature Pat Mahomes comps and everything like that. But South Carolina, they have given up a lot of pressure this year, a lot of sacks. Last week notwithstanding, and now you're facing this Clemson front that can generate heat. That's my concern on that side. I do like South Carolina, in terms of their defense. I do like their pass defense a little bit. I definitely like their secondary. They have that one stud cornerback Smith or whatever. So they should be able to, South Carolina should be able to do enough to address Clemson's passing game, but South Carolina's run defense is shoddy. Will Shipley is going to run all over South Carolina in this game. I think DJU will probably have some rushing yards too. I have not seen the prop number on Shipley this morning for the rushing yards, but whatever it is, I'd be taking the over on that. As far as the side, like I said, it's just a lean for me. I'm leaning Clemson. I'm going to lean against Farrell, but it's just a lean for Farrell as well. The total of this one was hard too, because my system was telling me over, and all the trends you look at are telling you under. So like that one was just tough for me, but I'm just going to lean towards Clemson in that one.
And a couple quick, notes here. The road team in this matchup in the last 4 games has covered the spread, and Clemson's 2-9 against the spread in their last 11 non-conference games. So, I wouldn't play it at 14. But if I get that hook, might as well play South Carolina. But it's not a live play for me either. I mean, it's a tough game. It could be 50-7. Clemson could rout them. You just have no idea what you're going to see from South Carolina.
For sure. The one con, I felt like James Earl Jones there for a second in Field of Dreams. The one constant through all the years, right? But the one constant with South Carolina, it's their special teams, right? But like the other 2 units, you could get one thing, you could get the other. It's like opening the Pandora's box. You don't know what you're going to see back there. South Carolina special teams is the best in the nation. The other 2 units totally up in the air, and that's what makes this game tough. But Farrell, speaking of the systems, I saw this one on the Action Network that I thought was really, I was talking about, most of the systems and the data you looked at outside of my system was pointing at the under. One of the really interesting ones, and I wanted to shout out Action Network for this one. There was a college football system, bet the under between in a game of 2 teams that are coming off of 40 plus point showings in their last one, and I guess that has that's covering 52.3% since 2005. So at least a little bit of data significance there. All right, Mike.
Hey, by the way, Matt Rule just got hired at Nebraska. I know it's a betting show, but that's going to impact us next year as we do this show because it's a good hire, man.
It's a very good hire, and shout out to you. I was on the I was on the Rule to Nebraska train as well, but I want to give a specific shout out to you because whatever day that was when all the media was coming out and being like, Matt Rule has turned down Nebraska. Matt Rule has turned down Nebraska. I didn't see anyone out there but you tweet out, no, he is not.
No,
he didn't. Shout out to you. Great reporting.
Well, and you know what? No one will give me credit for that ever, but
I will.
My sources said that he didn't turn him down. He didn't. And now he's the coach. And, there's certain guys out there, maybe a guy named Dennis Dodd, who just sort of throw stuff at the wall and see if it sticks. And sometimes it doesn't stick. So anyways, we can move on, but that's going to be very interesting for Nebraska moving forward. It's going to impact the way I pick Nebraska games in the future, because I think this is a really, really good hire.
I love that you got a Dennis Dodd shot in as we were transitioning out of the South Carolina game. One of my favorite random moments in bowl history was when Dennis Dodd was talking crap about the Mayo Bowl while it was going on last year. And then, how can you dump a full vat of mayo on a grown man and call it entertainment? And then Shane Beamer, who had just gotten the mayo back because they had upset UNC, he sees it on Twitter and did one of the great dunks I've ever seen a college football coach do to a writer. And then at the end of it, he put hashtag find some joy. Classic. Classic.
He's just a miserable dude who just makes stuff up. It's just what he is. But
hate to see it, but congrats to Matt Rule.
So that was a good segue into the game.
Another noon kickoff. Michigan at Ohio State. Mike, this one for most of the week, this line was sitting at 7.5. We had the weird situation with both teams as running back situations. This morning it is now toggled up to Ohio State -8. We have a total on this game of 56 points. Who do you lean in the game?
So, it's a rivalry game. It's in Columbus. Ohio State lost last year. Ryan Day is, believe it or not, a guy who's lost 4 games, I believe, in his entire career at Ohio State is under pressure because if he loses 2 straight to Michigan, he's going to be knocked out of the playoff, first of all, most likely. And people are not going to be happy whatsoever. So a lot of pressure on Ohio State here. But knowing Ryan Day, he's gonna step up to that pressure. He's gonna call one of his best games. Everything speaks to me to say Ohio State's gonna rout them, but again, the 8 is a good number. It's over a touchdown. Michigan has a good offensive line. Blake Corum's going to play. They're going to slow it down. They're going to play power football. They're going to try to keep C.J. Stroud off the field. Their defense is solid, and C.J. Stroud does not like to be pressured, nor does he like to come off his first read. So I think this is going to be a close football game. I mean, Ohio State should win based on talent and the home field advantage, but they would probably win by 7. So give me Michigan if I'm getting 8 in this one, or 7.5.
Yeah, I'm going to lean your way as well with Michigan. Although I will say, before the Corum injury, I was all prepared not only to take the points, but to call for the Michigan outright upset. And Corum, going back to that thing, he gets the knee banged up against Illinois last week. He was in the walking boot initially, but then we saw him walking around on video. There was an offensive lineman from Michigan during the week who sort of put his foot in his mouth by saying, like, obviously with Blake out, it's just next man up. And this is something we've been preparing for. And so that was on like Wednesday. And so, it's sort of this similar situation to last week with Oregon when their players were sort of openly talking about how it seemed like Bo Nix was going to miss that game. But then the next day, Corum comes out on like some podcast or something, and he's like, no, I'm fine. I'm going to play. And so it's like, okay, I mean, according to Blake Corum is playing today. What percentage will he be? And then Donovan Edwards, I'm not sure what his status is right now, but like their RB2, he missed the Illinois game. So that's what makes it even more important that Corum not only plays, but that he handles usage here. But we did hear this morning, Pete Thamel reported that Travion Henderson's going to be out for Ohio State, so they're missing him. Ohio State is getting Mayan Williams back, but just like Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams has been in the lineup, out of the lineup. Even the games where he's active, he could get injured and then pulled out early. So that's going to be something interesting to watch. But of course, they still have Dallas Hayden. So, I mean, that's what you want. You want one of those two guys to play so you can put in Hayden behind him and not have the precipitous depth concerns. Mike, I like what you mentioned about C.J. Stroud under pressure. I think that has been one of the more underrated storylines around this Ohio State team. C.J. Stroud under pressure, his game is cratered this year. The adjusted accuracy has come down. The turnover-worthy plays have gone up. That stuff has been kind of concerning, and Michigan can get after the quarterback. So how does that manifest? I don't think Michigan secondary is going to be able to spend many seconds with those two stud Ohio State receivers in coverage. Jackson Smith and Jigba's not playing today, to mention that as well. But Harrison and Egbuka, you don't want them running around the field for an extended amount of time. So the Michigan pass rush is going to be big. I also think that Michigan's offensive line, speaking of pass rush, I think it can address Ohio State's ability to put heat on the quarterback. Michigan's offensive line has been really, really good this year. I'm still going to lean towards Michigan in this game, getting the 8 points, even with Corum's sort of shaky status, but just now feeling a little bit more bullish that he's going to play. I'm going to trust Michigan getting the over the touchdown. Did you have any props on this one, Mike?
Yeah, I have one weird prop, and so a few numbers here. The underdog in this game is 4-1 against the spread in the last 5. Michigan's 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 road games. I also, even though this number here, the total's gone over in the last 8 Michigan-Ohio State games, like 8. And I'm sneakily feeling the under here as a parlay. I take Michigan the under because, like you said, with the running back questions on both sides, with neither quarterback. I mean, J.J. McCarthy's a bit inaccurate, and this is his first big game. So this leads into my prop, which is an odd prop. So his over-under for rushing yards is 11.5. Okay, that's not a lot, but it's plus 100 to go under. And I'm taking the under, and I'll tell you why. He averages 4.5 carries a game. He's only been sacked 8 times this season, but he hasn't faced a defense like this. I mean, you could argue Illinois is a good defense, and they are, but Ohio State, and he hasn't been in a big game like this. And I think the clock in his head, which I've seen all season long, is sometimes a little too fast, which leads to the inaccuracy, or sometimes a little too slow, and it leads to him not throwing receivers open. I think he's going to get sacked a couple times this game. He's only been sacked 8 times. Stroud only been sacked 7 times this entire season. but I'm looking for, a few sacks to offset any rushing yards he has. I don't think he's going to tuck and run. I think he's going to throw the ball away. I think he's been told, don't make any mistakes, don't fumble, don't throw interceptions. So go under 11.5 rushing yards, which is stupid, right? Because he could do that in one carry with a coverage breakdown, but it's a plus 100. And I just think that he's going to fall below that number because of sacks and maybe intentional grounding here and there.
This is a really important game for JJ McCarthy, right? Like the way that you attack that Ohio State defense, it's through the air. And Mike, I like the way that you set that up. Of accuracy and placement has been a bit of a bugaboo for McCarthy this year, but he doesn't make the mistakes. The decision-making process is there probably because it's been drilled into his head since the day he stepped onto campus from Harbaugh of don't throw the interceptions, take care of the ball, etc.
Oh, yeah.
JJ McCarthy.
And today especially, that is the message to JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, because one play could flip the entire game, right? And so, but you have that on the one side, but then on the other side, you want McCarthy to be able to take advantage of what Ohio State's Achilles heel is. So I'm going to be very interested to see how the Michigan brass sort of jives that and how they try to play the middle of that. And they know Corum's status. We don't, right? Like if Corum was 100%, I mean, he's just getting the lion's share of your usage and you just go from that. But we don't know what it is, and not knowing that and thinking maybe he'll be 85% or 80% or something like that makes it even more important that JJ McCarthy makes some plays through the air. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But to Mike's point, he's going to be back in the pocket more than usual, I think, in this game.
And it's hard to play quarterback that way. It really is. If you're a talented kid like JJ McCarthy, who has a lot of the skills that you're looking for as a mobile kid too, it's hard to play quarterback that way. When it's in your head, you're just hearing Harbaugh's voice over and over again. Don't screw up. Don't make a mistake. Don't do this. Don't do that. It's going to lead to, personally, I think, an extra half second in his head, perhaps, and a little bit of questioning of what he's seeing, which could lead to a couple sacks, which could lead to that number being under. So originally I saw 11.5. I'm like, an athletic kid like JJ McCarthy could do that. And then I dug into the numbers. They don't want him running. They don't design runs. They don't do anything with him on the ground unless things break down to a point where he can't throw it away, or he's on his third read, and he just has to sort of use his athleticism to get yards. So, to me, I was originally over 11.5, and I'm like, nope, give me the plus 100. He's going to, have negative rushing yards probably with a couple sacks.
Moving to our last one before we get to audience questions. So if you guys have any questions, get them into the chat now, and we'll get to them in just a second. We got a 3 p.m. Eastern kickoff here, Mike. Louisville traveling to Kentucky, another rivalry game. This one, we have a line on this one of Kentucky -3. Seems like the market hasn't really known which way to go with this one this week. Probably in part because Malik Cunningham's status, the Louisville quarterback, is up in the air. We got a total on this game of 43.5. Mike, who do you like in this one?
I like the money line here. So middle of the season, I was talking to some people that I know at Louisville, and Satterfield was playing essentially for his, job. And they felt that the recruiting's going so well, NIL's going so well. He just has to get some wins. Now he's in the top 25. And one of the big discussions was, let's say they have a losing season, but as long as he can beat Kentucky, he's alive. Now they're going in this game with a lot of confidence. And I know there's questions at quarterback, but this Kentucky team is as flat as a team can be. What they're going to do because they don't have a quarterback who can scare you. Will Levis does not scare me. Anthony Richardson last night showed me that you can't be afraid of him either. You can easily defend guys like this. And I think Louisville is going to have the proper strategy. They did it against Sam Hartman, who's a much better quarterback, honestly, college quarterback. I mean, I know Will Levis has a cannon for an arm, but I don't care. He's just not good. And I think Louisville is going to win this game outright. So if you're giving me 3, sure, but I don't want 3. I want the money line. The road team covers 7 out of the last 8 times in this meeting. Louisville's 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 meetings against Kentucky. This is a rivalry game, but it's Louisville peaking and Kentucky kind of flatlining at the wrong time.
This game is so hard to talk about because we don't know Cunningham's status, right? And Satterfield won't tell us anything. All he would say all week is, I'm hopeful. And the I guess the most positive thing he said was Malik has a better chance of playing this weekend than he did last weekend. And it's like, okay, great, thanks. Malik didn't play last week, so maybe it's a 1%. Yeah,
GTD.
Straight game time decision. And like I was looking it up, none of the beat reporters know either. So nobody has
find out. You want me to find out right now?
Yes, please. I think our viewers would love that too.
Is that appropriate? Should I be doing that?
1,000%. Yes, we need this information. Like because my take on this game is if Cunningham doesn't play, then I'm smashing the under. Right, because then you have the Doman kid again playing for Louisville, and to Doman's credit, he's won both of the spot starts. But like he's just a guy. Like last week they beat NC State. He went 12 for 25, 153 yards. It's like, but then it's NC State, whatever. Louisville's defense matches up well against the Kentucky offense for a lot of the reasons that Farrell was talking about. Kentucky's offensive line is weighed down. Levis does not play well under pressure. Who knows if he'll ever play good? Like Levis would be a good 7-on-7 quarterback, but like under heat and everything like that, you have to solve the puzzles with the bullets flying. It's a different thing, right? And his game plays way down. I expect Louisville's defense to shut down Kentucky. And then on the other side, it's all just dependent on Cunningham's status. Kentucky has a very good defense. Kentucky plays very much like Iowa. It's funny because Stoops, of course, is like the whole Stoops family are like Iowa guys or whatever. But like they can do some things that could affect even a Cunningham-led offense. But if Cunningham's playing, Louisville's going to go back to running fast and getting the explosive plays. Cunningham will be able to take advantage even of the good coverage by getting out of the pocket and stealing yards as a scrambler, stuff like that. If Cunningham plays, I'm on Louisville, and I'm with you, Farrell. I'm taking that money line. I think Louisville wins this game. If he doesn't, I don't want anything to do with this side because I think it's just going to be a coin flip, or whatever. Yeah. And I just want the under because Kentucky goes under like every friggin' game, right? It's the same thing with Iowa.
I agree with you. Iowa State too.
Yeah.
So I got the feeler out there. We'll see. These are the moments where I get ignored sometimes. A couple of weeks, what was it? Was it last week? Bo Nix. I've got friends everywhere, and I don't like to call in a lot of favors, especially in regards to sensitive information. But they ask me for 85,000 things, and then I ask them for one thing, and all of a sudden their phone doesn't work, and I'm not getting called back. So this will probably be one of those situations, but it's out there. I have asked, but I don't know if I'll get an answer. I still like Louisville. I just think these teams are trending in the wrong way. There's a lot of excitement at Louisville about what's happening here. And honestly, you talk about sleeping giants in the ACC, and everybody's talked about North Carolina for 100 years. Louisville is the sleeping giant in the ACC. They are. If they can get continuity at coaching, if they can get their staff a little bit younger, because they need guys. They've recruited well, but they've relied a lot on NIL and stuff like that. They get their staff a little younger. He gets a few more hotshot recruiters in there. Louisville's going to be a team to watch. So Kentucky, he signed his extension and then lost to Vanderbilt. This team's kind of down. Nobody believes in Levis anymore. I think, just based on emotion, I think Louisville's the team here, even if Malik Cunningham doesn't play. How about that?
Oh, wow.
I mean, he's 0-3 against Kentucky. He's not the answer. They'll find an answer. And I think it's the defense. I'm sensing a few potential defensive touchdowns or some very, very promising field position for Louisville based on their defensive game plan here.
I think the under is maybe the play, but I like the confidence with Louisville either way. I like that. Guys, we're going to take a brief break to thank our sponsors, DraftKings Sportsbook. Betting pros and DraftKings Sportsbook are teaming up to bring you a wild offer this season. New customers can get a free $50 bet when making their first-time deposit. To get in on the action, just create your new DraftKings Sportsbook account using the promo code CFBPros. Make a minimum deposit of $5 or more, and then use your free $50 bet to get in on the college football action. Again, to claim this offer, go to the link in our video description or pinned in the live chat and sign up to get started. Mike, we got some listener questions. So let's dive into our first batch of listener questions. This one comes from Brian Hagman. He asked, can Michigan cover the 8 versus Ohio State? Brian, we just talked about that one. You can watch the replay back. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Both Mike and I lean towards Michigan is our leans. Mike, do you have any other thoughts?
No, I mean, again,
we ran over them.
7.5 or 8. If you're going to get that a low scoring game, I believe in Michigan to cover.
The next one comes from Brock Marishak. He says, "Good morning, guys. A&M." He's asking about the A&M LSU game. Brock, we'll be talking. We have that on the schedule to talk about here in the next 20, 30 minutes. So we'll hit that one here in just a second. Mike Huseman asks us, when has a service academy ever covered 20 points against a fellow FBS team? I don't feel like I can trust Army minus 20 against UMass. Mike Farrell, we have another dumpster dive question. Are you ready to jump into the dumpster with me?
It is a dumpster dive. I'll let you go first because my thoughts are going to be very succinct.
Okay, so I agree with Mike Huseman on this one. Army's 4-6, and you would think all they got to do is beat UMass, and everybody beats UMass, and then you beat Navy, and you're into bowl season. Not so fast, my friends. Army does this stupid thing every year where they schedule the 2 FCS teams. Recall that only one FCS win counts, which makes the second one just totally useless. And it's going to come back to bite Army here because, they've been eliminated from bowl season because of that. And then meanwhile, UMass over the past month, their average margin of loss, so this is over their last 4 games, it's 11.5 points. And that's, you're like, oh, well, they're probably just playing the FCS teams that Army's playing. That sample included UConn, who's going to a bowl game, and Texas A&M in College Station. And yeah, A&M's down, but it's friggin' UMass playing in College Station. Whole point being, UMass is still giving effort. This Army team is not good, but compared to recent Army teams or whatever. And Mike's point is very well taken, where it's an easy rule of thumb. When the service academies are getting double digits as an underdog, you want to sniff heavily around them and see if you can find any justifiable reason to bet them. But it's the opposite when they are favored by double digits, and certainly when they're favored by 20. This is wasn't an official play for me, but I will tell you, this probably made my final cut of 20 on UMass, because I just think this is a ridiculous line, and I think that they'll stay within it. Mike, your thoughts?
I agree with everything you say, except UMass is just an abysmally horrible football team, and they could easily lose this game by 30. So I'm going to go the opposite of you. I know it's a lot to lay, but UMass is, are they the worst team in the country? Yeah, I think they might be. So I'll lay the 20. Give me anything against UMass. Give me you, me, and 9 other people against UMass to cover.
I do have them 131 out of 131 in my power rankings. I have them 1.5 points behind Florida International, and then I have them 5.1 points behind the third worst team, Akron. So yes, UMass is objectively terrible. But Mike, what do you need to stop the triple option? You need grizzled defensive minds with experience. The fighting Don Browns. Get it done today.
Grizzle. I love Donnie Brown, man, but listen, UMass horrible. Malik Cunningham, very unlikely to play.
Very unlikely to play. Oh,
very. It's not a game time decision, really. It's very unlikely to play. He hasn't practiced once, smidge this week. So
that is very good intel. There you go. Right from Mike Farrell. It looks like Malik Cunningham is not going to play today. Bet accordingly for everybody out there. You're still taking, even with that, you're still taking Louisville. Okay. Love it.
Listen, I'm fading Will Levis as much as you could possibly fade a human being.
It's generally been a positive bet so far in his career. Fryman 757 asks us, or Fireman, either Fireman or Fryman, but
I think it's Fireman. Fireman.
Can't bet props in VA. Looking for a solid 4-game parlay today.
I'm going to let you do this. I'm going to let you handle the 4-game parlay. You're the parlay master.
I want to do the parlay at the end because I keep forgetting to do our parlay and then our best bet. But this week, I'm not forgetting. So I will have a 4-game parlay for you at the end, maybe even a little bit bigger. And then the other one, can we trust Bo Nix's ankle today to take his over 26 yards? Mike, this is right in your wheelhouse. You love the quarterback rushing props. You got any thoughts?
Hashtag prop god. That's my new nickname. No, not prop god. That's a little too much. Prop father.
Oh, I love prop father. There you go.
Yeah, I'm so arrogant. It's unbelievable. But 29.5 rushing yards. So he's got an ankle, right? And last week he was a statue against Utah. It was a game time decision. He played. He toughed it out. There were no design runs for Bo Nix last week. He was told to stay in the pocket and just duck if you have to. Still pulled out a gritty win. This week, ankle much better. And this is a guy, you got to remember, who broke his ankle in high school, broke his ankle at the end of his Auburn career, knows more about ankles than an orthopedic surgeon, and knows more about rehabbing and recovering and what he can and cannot do with an injured ankle. So everybody's going to fade that number. They're going to say under the rushing yards, he's not ready. He's also an extremely competitive human being, as any good quarterback would be. But to him, it's a little bit extra level. He's one of those guys that, you tell him to slide and he's not going to slide. Just never going to happen. This is a rivalry game against Oregon State. They're going to have less design runs. We're not going to see the dual threat Bo Nix from the first 10 games of this season. But when things break down, this dude's going to run. And he's not going to slide. He's not going to get out of bounds. He's going to get over. I've got it 29.5 yards. It is the over. Mash it. He's going to hit that number. He's hit it all season. Last week, I didn't touch it. I knew he was injured. This week, I don't care about the ankle. Take the over in the rushing yards.
Wow. Yeah, it's a fascinating one because of the status of that ankle, right? Like, I was just looking through his game log. And, Mike, you mentioned this. The only 2 games previous to this, like against you, not against Utah, but the games before you. So the first 10 games, Bo Nix goes over that number in every game but 2. The right. 2 games where he didn't go over, it was the blowout against Colorado and then the even bigger blowout against Eastern Washington, where the coaches probably told him, well, not only told him like, Bo, protect yourself, don't do anything stupid, but also less design runs. Why would you want Bo Nix to take extra hits? Yeah,
he didn't play a lot in those games either, not as much.
In the games with regular game scripts, he's gone over in every one of them, except again for the Utah game. But that game was coming right off the injury. But it's the one thing that concerns you, right? Because last week he has 2 carries for -3 yards, and that was probably a sack thing as well. He had 1 2-yard run, and I guess he must have had a 5-yard sack. But it's like, how healthy is that ankle? If the ankle's healthy, I agree with Farrell, because I also think this Oregon State defense is really feisty, specifically so in the secondary. And Oregon is used to having passing success. This week, I don't think they're going to have as much, but like they still have to have the passing concepts. I think, they do the design runs for Nix when he's healthy. So hopefully he's healthy. But then also, I think you're going to see some scrambles from Nix today because, again, those Oregon State outside corners are really good. So I think that there's going to be more of that than there's been in the other Oregon games. But it's just tough because I don't know the status of Nix's ankle. So that's why I wouldn't play it personally. Nathan Cerna asked about favorite play today, Auburn. Oh, he said his favorite play is Auburn Tigers plus 22. Nathan, get your popcorn ready. Farrell and I have thoughts on that in just 1 second. We'll get into that game. And then 2K asks, what are your thoughts on the battle in Georgia? Georgia Tech is plus 36 currently, leaning towards taking Georgia Tech with the points. We can address this one because this one just missed the sheet this week. I would be on my lean on that game would be to Georgia Tech getting those ridiculous amount of points. Yep. It's a motivation discrepancy thing. Georgia Tech, I don't know how they got here. Credit to the interim staff. It's another one of these interim staffs, like Auburn, who we're going to talk about in a second, where they're rallying after they fired the head coach. Georgia Tech, just like Auburn, has rallied all the way to being only 1 game from bowl eligible, 1 win from reaching the bowl. They're 5-6 heading into this game. Obviously, they are the enormous underdogs to get that done. But on the other side with Georgia, they're playing the SEC title game next week against LSU. They don't need style points whatsoever. They can win this game by 3 points, and it's fine. Like, it doesn't change their status all. So I don't expect like Georgia to be doing anything special in the second half outside of deflate the ball, no injuries. We need to get to next week, and I think you're going to see waves of backups sent in early if that is indeed what the scenario is. If Georgia's just stomping Georgia Tech at halftime, they're going to use the second half as like sort of a half quasi bye heading into that LSU game. So I would take the points if I was betting that game.
Me too. I mean, that's so many points, and again, you're right. I mean, third quarter, you could have all your starters out. You'd be resting everybody. It's a rivalry game too. And Georgia Tech traditionally actually covers the line in this because the line is always so high. And there's always this, not always, but most of the situation is motivational, as you said. I mean, it's like Georgia, if they're not, in the SEC title game, then they're going to care less. If they are heading there, they're going to rest their guys. So this reeks of, Georgia Tech with 1 billion points. So start off the game. What's the line? 36. Start out the game
36
nothing, and see if you can hang in.
So moving on to the mid-afternoon games now, 3:30 kick. We were just talking about Bo Nix, so we got a natural transition here. Oregon traveling to Corvallis to take on Oregon State. Another one of these classic rivalries. We have a line in this one. This one opened earlier this week. It might have been like 4 or something like that. Came down to 3.5 for like a day or two. Then it was down to 3, which is where it'd been in the days leading up to today, like the last day or two. Now, this morning, I wake up and it has gone down to Oregon -2.5. So it seems like a sect of the market is behind Oregon State. Mike, are you?
I am. As much as I, love Bo Nix, as much as I think he's going to get those rushing yards, as much as I like, how tough he is, and that win against Utah was a really exhausting, draining game.
Yeah, it was.
This is a pick'em to me. In my head, because it's, obviously it's at Oregon State. Oregon State's a really, really good defensive team, as you mentioned, and they don't get any attention for what they do. And I think they're going to be as motivated for this football game as anybody ever. And they're just money makers, man. I mean, they're 11-0 against the spread in their last 11 games at home. They never not cover at home. 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 conference games, 5-0 in their last 5 games overall. They're a covering machine. So when you put together a rivalry game with a little bit of a mobility question mark at quarterback, and an Oregon State team that feels nationally disrespected, because nobody talks about them ever. You ask 100 people, 99 won't even know who the head coach at Oregon State is, period. It's just the way it is. And they're going to play with a lot of fire, a lot of passion. I wouldn't say money line. I want those 3 points, because it could come down to a 1 or 2 point game. But give me Oregon State here.
You were mentioning how good Oregon State has been at home, against the spread, and how feisty they've been all season overall, and 9-2 overall against the spread this season. They've also been really good this season when jumping up in competition. And you love to see that, right? Like, because that's the thing you're sometimes concerned about in matchups like this. But Oregon State's already proved the concept this year. They're 5-1 against the spread against teams with winning records this year. And they faced some of these finessey teams that are really good and totally taken them out of their games. The USC one, USC was so fortunate to escape that game with a win. I think USC won 17-14. By far the worst game that Caleb Williams had all season long. And again, that's what Oregon State's passing defense does to you. I was talking about that when we were talking about the Bo Nix prop. I think it's going to be really tough for Oregon to throw here. And again, I don't know what Nix's status is. Like, I don't know what percentage he is. All I know is last week when I was watching, there was a couple of those balls he just couldn't drive into them. That last interception that presented the possibility that Oregon could lose that game. I thought they were going to after that last interception, but the ball didn't get there fast enough because Nix, it wasn't he didn't make the wrong read or whatever. It's just it wasn't the fastball he thought he was going to throw because he couldn't plan off the thing. And now again, when you're playing this awesome Oregon State defense, if that continues to be the case this week, he's going to get picked off again because the throwing windows just shut faster against Oregon State. The one thing I know for sure that Oregon's offense will be able to do is run the ball. That's where you want to attack Oregon State's defense. So, but Oregon's going to have to kind of play one-handed a little bit in that regard. On the other side, I have no such concerns. Oregon State, to me, is one of the most underrated offenses in the entire nation. And it's a credit to Jonathan Smith, the Oregon State head coach, that not only did he lose the guy who was the driving force of last year's offense, that BJ Baylor kid, he replaced him, but also he replaced the quarterback in the middle of the season, and everything's kept churning. This Ben Gulbertson, or however you pronounce his name, the freshman that Oregon State's put in, I don't think has he lost yet he's Ben Gulbertson is 5-1, both straight up, and also against the spread as a starter for Oregon State this week. And over his last 6 starts, they've outscored opponents by almost 17 points per game during Gulbertson's start. So I think I would have planted my flag with him the rest of the season, which is what Oregon State has done as well. The Oregon State's passing attack is very, very efficient, and their running game is very, very efficient. They stay on schedule. Oregon, their defense can't defend either. like Oregon State is absolutely going to be able to run on Oregon. And they're also going to take advantage of Oregon's crappy secondary off those play action shots that Oregon State feasts on. So Oregon State's defense is bottom 10 nationally in passing yards per game. So that, I mean, like you don't, it's a completely opposite thing when you're talking about both the passing games and the matchup that they're being presented with. And Mike, the last point, the Corvallis thing, it's such a good point. They just play so well there. The concept's been proven for me with Oregon State. I'm taking the 3 points or 2.5 points if that's what you got in your book. I'm taking the money line. I think Oregon State's winning that game.
Yeah, it won't be a big juicy money line, but it's probably worth it. I want the 3 points, but I think we agree. People don't understand. You just named two, the quarterback and the coach, and nobody knows who they are, but we do, and they're gonna cover this. They might win it. They're gonna cover. This can be a fun, 1 or 2 point football game at the very least.
Yeah, unfortunately for the Oregon State, I think what do they care? But I think next year is when people start to wake up to the Oregon State thing, right? Like,
yeah, because
it's happening right under their noses right now.
Then they lose their coach to a bigger program.
Jonathan, oh man, Oregon State fans are out there crying. Jonathan Smith, though, wasn't he an alum? Seems like he's super loyal to the program. Hopefully he stays.
It's money, man. It's all about money.
It's all about
money.
Okay,
so as we segue into the Iron Bowl,
yes,
it was just reported by Pete Thamel on Gameday that Lane Kiffin to Auburn is not going to happen.
Wow.
Yeah, and Hugh Freeze is now the leading candidate. None of this surprised me. I mean, Jimmy Sack is the agent for both. I didn't think Kiffin would take that move because to me it's a lateral move, and I know Auburn fans get upset about that because the better recruiting, better NIL, but it's also a nightmare with the boosters. And I knew Hugh Freeze, despite the extension at Liberty, is going to take this job. So now that Kiffin's gone, because I wasn't 100% sure, Kiffin's hard to read. Hugh Freeze is going to be your next coach at Auburn, and they're going to announce it probably after the Iron Bowl here. So segue into that fun, exciting 22.5 point game. Yeah,
you've been full of breaking news today. This is good.
It might, I mean, what do you? I've been around 100 years. I kind of know some people. It just happens.
I love it. Moving to our next 3:30 game. We talked about this before with the guy who had asked the question about the Iron Bowl. We're going to get to it right now. Alabama minus 22.5 today, hosting Auburn with a total on this game of 50.5. Mike, who do you like in the Iron Bowl today?
I like Auburn. Bama is going to win. We know this. Okay. But again, this is a rivalry game. Some wacky, weird things happen. 22.5 is too many points for me. I was teasing in my head a prop of Bryce Young below 2.5 touchdowns as well, because it was a positive money line there. I think this is going to be a 20-point win, maybe a 17-point win. But again, you just can't lay that many points to me in a rivalry game, despite the fact that Auburn's down. They've played well under Cadillac. They're playing with a passion and a feistiness. They're fighting for him to win that job, even though he's not going to win that job or get that job. They're fighting for a bowl game. There's a lot of fighting. Now, again, it's in Alabama. But Alabama doesn't strike me as the team, honestly, that can blow a team out in this particular instance. And the reason I say that is I point to games where they should have. Obviously, I think they should have clobbered Texas A&M, and they didn't at home. They just beat Austin Peay 34-0, but that's not enough. You should beat Austin Peay 68-0. So I just don't like that 22.5. And if you're going to give it to me, Auburn's going to run the football. They've got a great 1-2 punch at that position. They're going to try to minimize opportunities for Alabama. They're going to try to make this a slugfest. And they're going to cover that 22.5. And I think they'll cover it by 5 points. I see a 17-point Alabama victory.
Yeah, I'm on Auburn as well. The Cadillac Williams thing, like you're talking about, they've covered all 3 games since Cadillac took over. In my column where I do the 10 best bets of the week, I was on Auburn in 2 of those games, and I'm going to try to ride them once more because they've just been so hot under Cadillac, especially against this Alabama team. This is not the same Alabama team that we've seen in recent years. Part of it's the struggle in the trenches. They also have honestly struggle on the perimeter as well. Their receivers have stunk all year. Their cornerbacks have sort of been up and down. Like there was a couple games where they stepped up, but like you've also seen sort of the inexperience. They had the weird thing with Ricks, the one veteran that was supposed to be there that they got from LSU was in and out of the lineup. There's been weird stuff there, but you can beat them through the air. But particularly, you can beat Alabama's defense with the run because they're just softer up front with that than they've been in recent years. I think that's the key here for Auburn. Auburn doesn't want to throw. And ever since Cadillac took over, seems like something was unlocked with Robbie Ashford. And now the running game has become even more dangerous. At the end with Harsin, like every game I was watching, because you kept expecting Auburn to show like any sort of a pulse at all. And then it was like these weird game plans where they weren't running Ashford as much as they should have. They definitely weren't giving the ball to Tank Bigsby as much as they should have. They were just doing weird things schematically. But ever since Cadillac took over it, now all of a sudden they're just doing what they should have done all along. And defenses have to be very concerned about Robbie Ashford leaving the pocket. He's not a great – I mean, he's a mediocre to below mediocre passer, as Mike and I have talked about in the past, but he's a very dynamic runner. And when you have to start sucking up all the defensive resources, or when your guy starts taking the first – all the defenders are taking the one step downhill right after the snap every time because it's run, then now Auburn's doing the play action thing. And Ashford, even though he's not a polished thrower, he's not very accurate, whatever, he does have a slingshot, and that kid can chuck it a long way. And so the play action game now has viability there as well. I think that they can attack Alabama's defense, get the nick with the running game, and then go over the top. I think that stuff's going to work out. I think it's also going to serve to keep the Alabama offense on the bench with the clock running and stuff like that. And then on the other side, the Auburn defense, they're sort of lopsided in sort of a similar way, I suppose, where Auburn has a really good pass defense, but they have a really bad run defense. Jamar Gibbs should have a big day with you got to put an asterisk and a caveat on that. He missed the last game against Austin Peay, but it seemed like Nick Saban was giving out several inactives in that game for guys that were like not 100%. Why would you play them? Looks like Gibbs is going to be back. If he's at 100%, he should feast on the Auburn run defense. But I think Auburn's going to totally take down that Alabama passing offense, because how are Alabama's crappy receivers going to get separation against Auburn secondary? I just don't think it's happening. So I think it's one of those.
Gibbs is 92.5 rushing yards too, so I would hammer the over if he's healthy.
I go over on that. And Saban came out on Monday and was like, yeah, Gibbs is fine. He's going to play. So unless Saban was lying through his teeth on that, I think they're Alabama's getting Ricks back too. But I don't think Alabama's going to have Tyler Steen in this game, their left tackle. He twisted his ankle last week, and it looks like he was ruled out earlier in the week. So it must have been a more serious injury, whatever. The one thing you got to keep an eye on there is, Auburn, you can rip them through the air if you get time, whatever. Auburn can put heat on the quarterback. It goes back to why they have whatever. They put heat on you, and then they in the defensive backfield they're skilled. So I'm going to take the points with Auburn in that game. It just seems like a lot of points based on the trajectory of both these teams. Alabama can't. They've been eliminated from the SEC title game. They're not going to be in the CFP. And Auburn is, like we mentioned before, is playing for their bowl lives. They somehow pull the stunner here. They're going to a bowl game, so they're going to give fight.
Yeah, and the other thing about this real quick, it used to be never bet against Nick Saban, right? That was always the rule. It was my rule anyways, and I learned this very early on with Nick Saban at Alabama. It doesn't matter what the line was. Never bet against Nick Saban. But me and my buddy Chife, who does some research for me for the show, we always would Bama. Take Bama. It doesn't matter. Don't even look at the line. They're 1-5 against their spread in their last 6 games. This is not Bama. This is not what we're used to seeing. And normally I would pick, Bama. I don't care. They're just not the same team. So, we agree. Take the 22.5. It's going to be a 10 to 17 point game.
Moving to our next one, the Minnesota Gophers, my local Minnesota Gophers, traveling today to Madison, Wisconsin to play the Badgers. The line was at 3 the whole time, and this morning at some books it's toggled up to 3.5. So we'll call it 3.5. Mike, who do you like in this one?
I like the Gophers. And I know we're going to disagree on this, which is fine. But these are two teams that play obviously very similar brands of football. Big offensive linemen, run the football, don't make mistakes, don't put your quarterback in any sort of situation that he's going to cost you a game. It's going to be an ugly game. I wouldn't bet the over if I were you, but I would take the 3 points or the 3.5 points is even better. I think, honestly, Minnesota is a better football team. Jim Leonard's going to be named the coach. We know that. So that question is gone. There's no more play for Jim and all that stuff. And I know Wisconsin's going to play hard. But I think Mo Ibrahim's going to have a big game. I think that offensive line is going to wear down a good defense for Wisconsin. And if you're giving me 3.5 in a really physical battle, I'll take the 3.5. So give me in Minnesota here.
So where I agree with you is both these teams have full strength. I do think that Minnesota has the better team, but the reason I got to go with Wisconsin here is Minnesota. I think they're going to be starting their backup again, Kali Akmanis. I was told a couple weeks ago that it looks like Morgan's out for at least the regular season and maybe the rest of the season period. He had suffered a concussion earlier this season. When he suffered the injury that's keeping him out now, all the Gophers will say is it's an upper body injury, but his head got hit on that play. Looks like it was another concussion. And Morgan is a kid who has a long history with concussions. So it looks like he done for the year. Kali Akmanis has not been good. He was bad last week against Iowa. That's understandable. Iowa has a top 5 pass defense or whatever, and they were playing in 1 degree wind chill and with 20-mile-per-hour winds. Mike, as you know, I was at that game. It was cold as hell. But Kali Akmanis, he also struggled against Northwestern earlier this year. So it's like he struggled at Penn State, which again, that's one's understandable too. But my whole point is we've now seen Kali Akmanis 3 different times. He has not been good in any of them. And the Gophers, they were already super conservative through the air. They've toggled that back even way more for Kali Akmanis. They don't trust that kid making decisions. So a bunch of it's just dump offs and stuff like that. Plus, you have the added thing of the Minnesota receiving corps stinks. It wasn't that good coming into the season, and then they lost their best receiver, Chris Ottman-Bell, to an injury. Now it's certainly one of the worst in the Power 5. And there's a whole bunch of G5 programs where you would take their receiving corps over what the Gophers have now. Last week against Iowa, because of this, right? Like the Gophers have a solid offensive line, but the quarterback play, they don't trust that guy. Their receivers are not good, but you have Mo Ibrahim. Mo Ibrahim's a stud. So last week, PJ Fleck was like, we have one road to winning this game. It's giving Mo Ibrahim as many touches as he can possibly handle and hoping for the best. Hope he goes into God mode and we can steal this one. Mo Ibrahim went into God mode. He had 40 touches from scrimmage and he had like over 250 yards from scrimmage. But the problem was at the end of that game, Ibrahim was fighting the entire way. But at the end of the game in the fourth quarter, near the end of it, he ends up fumbling, which if you give a kid 40 touches against a top 5 defense in 1 degree wind chill with 20-mile-per-hour wind swirling, you can't expect him not to turn the ball over one time. Be the same thing with a quarterback throwing against an awesome pass defense in swirling winds 40 times and being like, even though we want you to take chances, you can't throw an interception. Ibrahim, 1 week off of that, is he going to be? Are we going to get 100% Mo? I'm not sure about that. Yesterday, Iowa, the team that Minnesota was playing in those wonky conditions last week, they played way down against them. Nebraska was flogging them the whole game. And then, because Iowa had come out flat and then Iowa rallied at the end, but they came up short. I'm wondering if for Minnesota, this is another play down kind of a game like that, like Iowa just had. And then the other thing, just being one-handed on offense, knowing you have to give all the touches to Mo again, but can Mo handle 30 plus touches 1 week after going for 40 against Iowa? That I'm not sure about. And I definitely would not feel confident about Minnesota if I knew that Kali Akmanis had to throw the ball in this one. There's questions on the Wisconsin side too, but it seems like there's sort of getting better vibes around there this week with the news that Leonard is close to being named the full-time coach. Seems like a game they could come out and fight for him maybe. We have to see on Braylon Allen's status. He had gotten nicked up in the last game, but I do lean given the points with Wisconsin here.
Yeah, and he's banged up. I mean, everybody's banged up at this stage of the season, so it could be a battle of the running backs, and we'll see, how healthy Allen is. So we disagree on this one. A little bit of a slander against my guy Kali Akmanis. I know he's got 1 touchdown and 4, interceptions and all that, but Tanner Morgan's no great shape. Ray Merckx isn't either. So this is going to come down to the running backs, the offensive lines, and the Wisconsin offensive line has not been good. They're just not. I'm sorry. We all think they're going to be good every year. They're just not. And that Minnesota offensive line is pretty good in run. So I'll take the running game of Minnesota. You could take the running game of Wisconsin.
It's not hurt is Braylon Allen's phone when those feelers come in from USC. Then all of a sudden
I thought it was Michigan.
Oh,
remember? was supposed to be Michigan 2 weeks ago, and he said, I'm not going there. Jim Leonard's he'll be fine.
What you think Allen's staying next year at Wisconsin?
Yeah, he's not going to go. He's not going to go. If they didn't hire Leonard, like there's been a lot of internal stuff with Wisconsin as far as that locker room. That locker room is all Leonard. And there's been some talk, some recruits decommitted because they didn't think Leonard was going to get the job. When Leonard gets the job, recruiting is going to go back to normal, which isn't great, but it's solid. And Braylon Allen will stay for sure.
Moving to our next one. This is a 4 p.m. Eastern kick. Iowa State traveling to TCU. Line was at 9.5 for most of the week. It's gone up to 10 at TCU at most books. We got a total on this one of 46.5. What do you like in that one, Mike?
I was stunned when I saw your pick here. So I'm going to tell you that this is the Farrell 5-star feeling. This is my lock of the week, and it's Iowa State. Give them 10. They're not going to win. I don't think they knock off TCU. TCU is a very, very good football team, much more talented than Iowa State. But Iowa State always covers. They just do. They're 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 against TCU. I know this is a different TCU team, but they're also consistently good in covering football games. So, you want more wins. Matt Campbell probably should have left Ames a long time ago when he had $1 billion reasons to do so. They're not a good football team, but they'll ugly it down to keep TCU at bay, and they'll cover the 10.
Yeah, and what Mike's referring to is in the sheet yesterday, I had TCU in as my pick. I changed it because this morning it went to 10.
So you changed it this morning?
I changed it this morning.
Yeah,
because the line went up to 10. What's that? Sneaky, yeah. But when it goes up to 10, like the thing in my brain triggers about the Matt Campbell as a double-digit dog. It was only a lean for me to TCU, just like it's only a lean for me to Iowa State, because I think there's a lot of factors that are sort of outside your hands on this one. But with it getting to 10, Matt Campbell now he's 10-1 against the spread as a double-digit underdog with 2 outright upsets since 2016. And Iowa State's past 4 games is double-digit dog. Those games have been decided by only 13 combined points. Matt Campbell, every game he turns into a rock fight, even when it's the better team.
He's money when the spread's double digits. Money.
He's great in these spots. And so, it shouldn't matter a ton. It is a key number, but going from the 9.5 to the 10. But like I said, I was just leaning to TCU before. Then now I'm leaning to Iowa State for that reason and a couple other ones. One of the other big ones for me is Keandre Miller, the stud running back from TCU, and Quentin Johnston, the all-world wide receiver from TCU, who is going to be picked in the top half of the first round in April. They are both banged up with questionable statuses for this game. Those would be enormous losses for that TCU offense. They got other players for sure, but those are, those guys are very, very difficult to defend. And then, of course, with the Iowa State defense, they take away explosive plays. So, TCU's offense could be compromised, less than full strength today, and then have to work down the field methodically. You wonder if Max Dugan having to put the ball in the air a little bit more, could Iowa State flip the field a couple times? For those reasons, I have to lean towards Iowa State, even though we pick against TCU every week and we get it wrong. Although against the spread last week, I suppose.
The spread's the different. They're not going to win this football game. And Kendra Miller and Quentin Johnson are going to play.
Oh, they're both going to play.
Yeah, they're probable to play, so that the doubtful or the questionable gone, they're going to play.
Okay, now, so I got to upgrade them.
How much are they going to press them? How much are they going to push them? This is a game that TCU should win, and they're looking ahead to a tough Big 12 championship matchup with a ton on the line. I don't think they're going to overlook Iowa State here, but I also don't think they're going to push those guys through injuries that much. I think they're going to win an ugly game. And again, they don't need style points either. A lot of people might think they do, but there's no way anybody's going to leapfrog a one-loss team over an undefeated TCU team. Those days are kind of over. So they just have to win. They have to get out of here with a win, and I think they're going to do it, but it's not going to be a double-digit win.
Yeah, Mike had mentioned next week TCU, of course, is already locked into playing in the Big 12 championship. They're either going to play it's Kansas State if Kansas State beats If Kansas State beats Kansas, it's going to be TCU, Kansas State. But if Kansas State gets upset by Rock Chalk today, then Texas ascends to the Big 12 title game. So that's the intrigue there. One thing I want to mention quick out the door about this game is you come in looking at Iowa State. They lost their last game to Texas Tech, and they dropped to 4-7. And you're like, they're eliminated from bowl season, and so they have no motivation. And TCU has all the motivation in the world. TCU absolutely has all the motivation in the world, but Iowa State actually does have a little bit of motivation here because of how many bowl games there are this year. All of the projections, it looks like we're going to fall under on qualified 6-6 or better teams to fill all the slots. The next thing, Mike, as you know, it goes to 5-7 teams who have the best APR. Iowa State happens to be near the top of the 5-7 APR list, or right up near the top. So it looks like if Iowa State is able to pull off this upset, unless something crazy happens with several upsets outside of this, of 5-7 of the 5-6 teams winning, so more of them win than expected today to fill all the slots. It looks like Iowa State actually could sort of get into a bowl season if they pull this upset as one of those APR teams. Mike, moving to our next one. This is another audience question that we had. We can finally get to this one. Then we'll get back to audience questions after this game. So if you guys have any props, side, total questions, get them into the chat, and we'll get to them in just 1 second. LSU traveling to Texas A&M. This is another very similar to the last game we just talked about, whereas it was LSU minus 9.5 for most of the week. It is now toggled up very end of the week to LSU minus 10. We got a total on this game of 47.5 in College Station today. Mike, what's your angle on this game?
My angle is Texas A&M. The team has quit on him. Jimbo has lost the locker room. He's lost everything. He refuses to obviously give up play calling duties. We saw them against UMass last week, which is the worst team in college football.
That was almost the most embarrassing one.
It's really, really bad. I mean, you could point to the App State loss, and you could point to all this other stuff that's happened this season to Texas A&M. But that was just repulsively disgusting performance. LSU already, even against okay and good teams against A&M, they're 5-0 in their last 5 meetings against A&M and against the spread. 11-0 in their last 11-0 against the spread in their last 11 meetings overall. So I mean, they never not cover. Now we're used to this spread being lower. We're not used to seeing an LSU team giving 10 points to A&M because A&M, even under Sumlin, was a respectable football team. LSU is going to knock the doors off this team. They're going to beat them by 20 plus. This team can't score. This team doesn't care. This team's going to quit in the first quarter, and LSU is going to breeze to a 20-point victory.
Yeah, I don't know how you could bet A&M in this game. I just don't. There's enough doubt introduced into my head about variables outside of my control that LSU is not an official play for me this week. Especially at 10. But I don't know how you could back A&M. Every time someone has tried to back A&M this year, it's like, this is the game where they'll wake up and they'll try. And it never happened. You mentioned the UMass game. That was the perfect one of like, oh, well, at least they're going to show some pride here because they could just roll out of bed and win this game by 40, and that's not what happened.
They have nothing to play for. Nothing to play for.
Yeah, 0 to play for. And that's why I've wondered ever since Devin Achane got hurt. And when Devin Achane got hurt, that was really the time for Jimbo Fisher because they came into the season with really only the 2 standouts that you could trust on offense in Achane and Ainias Smith. Ainias Smith went down with that season-ending injury at the beginning of the season, and then Achane just became the mark man. And he's super explosive. I love Achane's game. I love watching him play. One of the fastest guys in all of America, any position, but he's 185 pounds or 180 pounds, right? Like he had to handle all this usage. Of course, he was going to get injured at some point. Unfortunately for him, that was already the biggest question we had about his NFL eval, but we'll be talking more about that maybe in the spring. But what I'm wondering about is why would Jimbo Fisher kept saying Devin Achane is going to return by the end of the season. He will be back. He will be back. And it's like they'd already been eliminated for bowl season. It's like, Jimbo, what game is he going to come back for? And why would he come back? Why would Devin Achane play at this game against LSU that means absolutely nothing? I'm not sure. But if Devin Achane is not playing, it's another one where Texas A&M just doesn't have any offensive players. It's a freshman quarterback. They don't have much of the running back room anymore. Their receivers, it's this really young receiving core. Maybe someday it'll turn into something, and Weigman and them can build something. But right now, they just don't got it. And it's just hard for them to move the ball. I also don't know how they're going to keep Harold Perkins away from the ball, the stud LSU young linebacker. Just, the havoc stuff, just ridiculous with him. And these past 5 games when LSU has really started to cook, Perkins has just been going off. And Daniels as well. Daniels, he has, and this is sort of a rushing prop angle, potentially 337 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns over the last 4 games. I have to lean LSU in this game, whether it's 9.5 or 10.
So 58.5 is the rushing yard over under for Jaden Daniels. And he averages over 70 in SEC play. And I think, the only thing that could stop him from getting the over on that one is, if this is a blowout and, they're sort of resting him for the SEC championship game. Other than that, take the rushing yards over. The funny thing is I see this matchup. I hate these things. I hate these matchup probabilities. I hate these percentages to win because it's all analytics and it just flies in the face of common sense. So, A&M has a 26.8% chance to win this football game. Where? How? What? Show me how. Does the bus not show up for LSU? I mean, there's just no way they're going to – it's a plus 300 money line for A&M. It should be plus 800. They're not going to win this game. They're not going to cover. They're an embarrassment, and they're going to – trust me on this. The for-cause digging has already begun to get Jimbo out of that contract, and he's going to eventually have to negotiate that buyout down, and I don't think he's going to coach next season.
One last thing on Harold Perkins, the freshman linebacker for LSU. Over the last 4 games, again, when LSU has really started to cook, Harold Perkins has 7 tackles for loss in those 4 games and 5 sacks, 22 pressures, and 15 hurries. Just over the last 4 games. Here's Texas A&M's pass protection stats. Texas A&M is 112th in that passing success and 115th in pass blocking. So, I mean, Weigman is going to be under duress the entire game. I don't think it's going to end well. He doesn't have weapons to work with anyway.
Well, let me talk about that recruiting class for Texas A&M last year. Number 1 recruiting class in the country, blah, 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 NIL. Guess who they lost? Is Perkins. He was committed to A&M. He was an A&M lock forever. They lost him late to LSU, and they're gonna pay the price for that today. And he's gonna be like, okay, I didn't want to be part of that recruiting class because I believed in what's happening at LSU. Oh, by the way, and I'm going to show you what you missed out on with me.
Yeah, it feels like Harold Perkins made the correct decision there.
Yeah.
Guys, we want to again thank our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up today with the promo code CFB Pros with a minimum deposit of $5 and get a free $50 bet. And we also want to tell you about a cool promotion that we have going on right now at Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. If you want a chance to win a signed Josh Jacobs Las Vegas Raiders jersey, courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction, you need to subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel right now. And if you're in this room, I assume that you're already doing this. But if not, I think the button's like right below where my face is talking probably. Click that subscribe button, comment below on this video, and that's it. So actually just ask Farrell and I a question. And if you subscribe,
you don't even have to ask a question. You could just say, I'm handsome. You don't even have to ask a question. Just comment.
Compliment Farrell, and then you'll be qualified.
You're in the running.
Make sure to turn on notifications to know when new videos drop and to find out if you've won. We're gonna hop back to listener questions here. Let's see. We got Dan Chavis asks us, how do you feel about Wisconsin -3? I don't trust the Gophers offense to keep it close. Dan, we talked about that earlier in the episode. You can watch it back on the replay. I'm on Wisconsin laying the points, and Farrell is on the Gophers. Nathan Cerna asks, first half under Georgia Tech. Georgia feels good with the points. Didn't know it was that many. I'm not sure what the over-under is in the first half, but yeah. Mike Huseman asks us, prop question for you guys. Cam Rising, 227.5 passing yards against Colorado, over or under. That one probably all comes down to how early are they going to yank Cam Rising if they're up by a crap ton of points, right, Farrell? Or you got any thoughts on that one?
Colorado's just awful in every way. So if he plays 3 quarters, he's going to get over that number. It just depends on if he plays the full 3 quarters. I mean, if he's playing in the 4th quarter, he's going to hit that over. But I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole because I don't know. I mean, it could be 50-0 in the yank him. Yeah,
Rising's been weird this year. He's one of the more like low-key inconsistent quarterbacks, like of the solid Power 5 ones. There's some games where he's locked in and dropping dimes, and then other games where it's just weird. Like the Oregon game, like I'm sorry to say this, the reason that Utah lost is because of Cam Rising. Like Oregon's defense is horrific, and Utah was running the ball. So it was a pretty simple scenario for Rising. Rising ends up going 21 for 38, not good. 170 yards, not good. 0 touchdowns, not good. 3 interceptions, very not good, and that's part of the reason why. Cam Rising now has gone under the total the last 3 games, even though it wasn't just Oregon's crappy defense. He also played Arizona's crappy defense and Stanford's crappy defense in that sample. But like the game before that, he lit up and USC has a crappy defense too. We got a lot of them in the Pac-12, but Rising lit up USC for 415 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was one of those like Cam Rising games. He had 287 against UCLA. It's just tough because it seems like he either jumps over it significantly or stays under it. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with game script. So I wouldn't touch that prop because it's outside of my control. No. Josh Witt asks us TCU point spread. I'm in doubt because all their games are close. Yeah, Farrell and I with it. I switched it to Iowa State with it being +10. Farrell's already on Iowa State, so we're both on Iowa State. Mike Lukovitz asks us Dalton Kincaid over 61.5 receiving yards.
No,
of course Kincaid gets all the targets, but like why is Utah going to keep these guys late into a game where this is just going to be a crazy blowout? So that would be the only concern for me there. Like, and why would that?
A great game. He had 11 catches, 99 yards, and a close game. But this isn't going to be a close game, and they're going to try to run the ball first. So again, if Cam Rising's still throwing passes in the fourth quarter and Kincaid's there, yeah. But no, don't take that.
Yeah, yesterday's UCLA Cal game. Now that one was much closer than we're of course projecting this game to be. But UCLA ran the ball in that game like 45 or 50 times or whatever. And I think you're going to see that with Utah here, where Utah has that deep stable of backs now, like, even behind Thomas, like they got 3-4 backs. I think this is the game where they give all those kids rushes. And again, if they're up by, 35 points in the third quarter, you might start seeing those guys yanked early. Do love Kincaid though. Kincaid dropped that bomb on USC in that one game. But okay, 2K asked us, what's the lock of the week that will require the Brinks truck to deliver me winnings? I have promised already in this show that I'll do both a parlay and my best bet of the week, and hopefully we get one out of Farrell too. So we'll do that.
I did mine. So mine are Iowa State and LSU. So Iowa State's my number one. That's my number one because they're getting 10. And Matt Campbell never, ever doesn't cover against 10. And then, LSU. But I would go Iowa State. That's my lock of the week.
I'm teasing it until the end. Dan Partridge asks, Apple Cup, why is UW only -2? Total too low as well. Dan, I have a ton of thoughts on that, and we're going to get to them in just one second because we're jumping into the Apple Cup here. And then Matt oh boy, this might be one of the funniest comments we've ever gotten. Matthew Reyes said, Mike is a good-looking man.
That's, what? I really am. So, what? Give him the jersey right now.
Call it off.
Yeah, just give him the jersey. He deserves it.
Yeah. Good job, Matthew Reyes. I love it. Moving to the evening games now. Notre Dame. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I can't wait for this game. Notre Dame traveling to USC. Got a line on this one now. It's been coming down all week. It's down now to USC -4.5. I even saw some books where it was at 4 when we were jumping on to record. The total has come down a little bit as well. It's sitting right now at 63.5. Mike, who do you like in this game, which kicks off at 7:30 Eastern tonight?
Okay, so you could take Notre Dame, and you could take the money line Notre Dame because there's going to be a nice plus, a juicy plus for you. I don't know what's going to happen in this football game. I do have the over, because I think there's going to be points scored, despite the fact, because USC's defense is horrible. So they're going to give up points to Notre Dame, and in turn, that's going to press USC to do their crazy stuff with Caleb Williams passing, throwing, and it's just going to be, to me, not a shootout. 63.5 or 64 or whatever isn't a shootout, but it hit the over. That's my pick here. My prop is kind of interesting because I have Caleb Williams, another quarterback rushing one. When I think quarterback rushing one's a really good yardage. Good money. 27.5 rushing yards. Take the over here. Notre Dame's solid against the run, and they're better against the pass. But Caleb Williams, when you're good against the pass, when his first and second read isn't there, he's magical. And I really do believe his feet are going to be the key to victory here. I think this is going to be a close football game. I think he's going to rush for at least 50 yards, could be 75 plus. So that 27.5 is low for me. So I'm not taking Notre Dame. I'm not taking the money line. You can if you want. I am taking the over, though. I think it's going to be over.
I am taking Notre Dame. I had Notre Dame plus 5.5 in my column, or plus 5. I know I have a Notre Dame plus 5.5 ticket. I wish I would have gotten it at 6, but it's both surprising to me and not surprising to me that the line has come down. Because you would figure that the public money would be on USC, especially after what we've seen in some of these recent weeks. But I think this is a bad, first of all, I think it's a bad situational spot for USC and a pretty good one for Notre Dame. USC is coming off that game with UCLA, that ridiculous back and forth track meet, super duper emotional game. Both teams threw and specifically UCLA threw everything into that, the kitchen sink. And to USC's credit, they did pull that one out by 3 at the end, picked off Dorian Thompson-Robinson around midfield when they were on their last drive. But now you have to turn around 7 days after that, and you have to play this Notre Dame team that plays the diametrically opposite way to UCLA, and a Notre Dame team that has no pressure on them here. No one's going to bat an eye if Notre Dame loses this game by 10 points. The pressure is all on USC, especially with all the CFP implications that you have here. I mentioned that Notre Dame doesn't play at all like UCLA. They play more like a Big Ten team, which is also the way that a team like Oregon State plays. USC has played very few teams with decent, both with decent or good defenses, and they can also pound the ball with physicality on the ground. Oregon State and Utah are the two most analogous teams to Notre Dame that USC has played this year. And the Trojans had big-time issues both those games. I already talked about Caleb Williams' game against Oregon State earlier this year, 16 for 36 for 1 touchdown, season low, 180 yards. Travis Dye was the reason they pulled that game out. He had 133 rushing yards. Travis Dye now, of course, is out for the season, USC's running back. And then the other thing I want to say, like USC's defense obviously is a travesty, and they've sort of been able to I'm looking for another word outside of luck, but the unsustainable turnover thing that they keep getting and keep getting. Teams that take care of the ball are just as problematic for them as teams with the good defenses, and particularly the good pass defenses like Oregon State Oregon State has, and then like Mike, you were mentioning, like Notre Dame has. Against Utah this year, that was the game I was talking about where Kincaid went absolutely berserk. He went rising at 475 yards total offense. Kincaid, 16 catches, 234 yards, and a touchdown. USC also gave up 3 touchdowns to Ezeki last week, UCLA's tight end. Earlier this season, they gave up 5 receptions to Stanford's tight end. USC struggles with the tight ends. Here's my favorite play of this game. Go over on Michael Mayer. I checked this morning. His number is only 55.5. USC stinks against tight ends, and Michael Mayer is the best one in America. When Notre Dame is going to be pounding the ball downhill with their run game, USC won't be able to stop that. Their defensive front stinks. So that's going to be the hammer. And then you're going to get the play action shots off that to Mayer, or the short passes to Mayer where they just turn around and they let him run after the catch. Michael Mayer is definitely going over the 55.5. But I think between the problems that Notre Dame's awesome secondary and awesome pass defense is going to give Williams and the passing game of USC, force them to go more back towards the run. Again, USC doesn't have Travis Dye this time around. And then Notre Dame being able to control the clock when their offense has it, which will also keep the USC offense off of the field. Having a guy like Michael Mayer, a trump card, we already know that USC struggles against guys like that, and Notre Dame's not going to turn the ball over. This unsustainable turnover luck that the USC gets, it ends this week. Notre Dame's top 30 in the nation in terms of taking care of the ball. They're not going to put the ball up for grabs. They're not going to do stupid things. And I don't think they're going to fumble either. I like Notre Dame in this game, getting the over 4 points or whatever. I think this is a coin flip. To me, this is a coin flip because I think Notre Dame is one of the worst matchups that USC can conceive of. This is not the way that USC wants to play. Notre Dame's going to get them into a phone booth and try to play rock'em sock'em. And again, we've seen USC greatly play down in those scenarios this year. So give me the points with Notre Dame. Think they're going to put a real scare into USC today. And give me the big over on Michael Mayer receiving yards for player props.
Before we get to your favorite game of the week, I just watched Blake Corum run onto the field, and he looks great.
Ooh, okay.
He looks great. No limp.
Looking
no
good.
issue.
Looks like Corum's going to play.
Oh, he's going to play, and he looks really good. So just take that we both agree to take Michigan +8, and that kind of cements it for me a little bit, which is stupid. He's jogging onto the field, but he's jogging with a purpose, and there's no limp.
So, Mike, you just mentioned the aforementioned obligatory Kansas discussion of the week. My Kansas Jayhawks traveling to the Little Apple, Manhattan, Kansas today to play Kansas State. Kansas State is favored right now in the market by 11.5 points. We have an over-under of 62.5. Mike, what is your angle on that game?
I'll take Kansas here. I mean, you're giving me 12. Kansas State is a very difficult team to figure out what they're going to do and who they are. Talent-wise, I mean, one of my props is for sure 100% take Deuce Vaughn. His rushing over is 116.5 yards.
I like this one too.
They're horrible against the run. I mean, they give up over 190 yards every game. They're the second worst rush defense in the entire Big 12, which is, saying something because Oklahoma is the worst. So they're just not a good team against the run. But that being said,
Mike, can I jump in with a couple of supporting stats here? Jayhawk run defense, 118th rushing success rate allowed, 118th in rushing PPA allowed, 105th in PFF's run defense grades. The only thing they're okayish at is 57th in rushing explosiveness, but you could dick them all day long as much as you want.
But that being said, I don't think it's going to be a pass-happy game plan. And I think it's going to be sort of a muck and run. And I think Kansas is going to try to keep this close, try to be, within one score in the fourth quarter, rivalry game. 12's too much. If this was a touchdown and a hook, I would take Kansas State. But I think Kansas is going to cover and they lose by 10.
I love that you're taking my Jayhawks. Unfortunately, I have to take the hated Kansas State Wildcats in this one, mostly because of the Deuce Vaughn against Kansas's run defense thing is really problematic for Kansas in this game. I don't think that Kansas State is a team that KU matches up well against. Kansas State rushes their let's see, I had it here somewhere. I think I can't find it, but in terms of their run percentage per play, they were like 25th in the nation or something like that. I'll find it here in a second. But I mean, they hammer the ball a lot on the ground. Give it to Deuce Vaughn. Try to get Deuce Vaughn in space. And Kansas, their front, you can push them around, and they have some problems tackling up there too. So Deuce Vaughn is going to have a big game. I do a huge cosign on Farrell. What you said about the Deuce Vaughn over rushing yards. I hate to say it. I've already bet that one. I already have the Deuce Vaughn over ticket. Unless they yank Deuce Vaughn early, he's absolutely going over 100 rushing yards because Kansas's run defense is so porous. Jalen Daniels also, he came back for Kansas last week. I think that's good news for the bowl game, but he wasn't ready last week, or at least, shaking off the rust, whatever. Didn't play well against Texas. Now he has to play an even better defense in Kansas State. They have a nasty defense at Kansas State. This is a tough environment to play in. And then the other thing I wanted to say is Adrian Martinez, he's out. It looks like he might be out for the rest of the season, but I don't think it's a downgrade to Will Howard. It just changes things. Adrian Martinez ran more. You got more of that utility, but Will Howard is a very clearly superior passer. And not only that, he can do something that Martinez can't, adds an element where he can stretch the defense. Kansas State now has this explosive passing element, and I think that's actually sort of clutch when you pair him with Deuce Vaughn. Because now the defenses can't just load up on the box to try to stop Deuce Vaughn or Martinez when that was what it was at the beginning of the season when it was just run. I like this Kansas State team. I sort of think that they're going to drop the hammer on Kansas here. Kansas already has their 6th win, so they're not super motivated. And like I was mentioning before, Kansas State needs to win this game to get into the Big 12 title game. If they lose it, if Kansas rises up and upsets them, then Texas goes to the Big 12 title game. I'm going to lay the points with Kansas State. We're going to talk about one more game and then quickly get to any other questions we have from the audience. So if you have any last-minute ones, put them in the chat, and we'll hit them before we get out of here. Mike, the Apple Cup, one of our listeners had asked about this one earlier. We're gonna hit it right now. Washington -2 at Washington State. The guy who was asking the question was confused about this line, so we can get into that. We got a total on this game of 60, 10:30 Eastern tonight. Kick, who do you like in this one, Mike?
I do like Washington here. Penix can't be stopped in the passing game. I think it could be a shootout. I think the over is intriguing as well. And I won't go into depth about a lot of it, but in this matchup, the favorite usually covers 6-1 in the last 7 meetings. So I'm going to go with Washington and Penix in that passing game to, obviously win the football game and win it by, maybe a touchdown, maybe 10 points.
I'm gonna lean towards Washington State, or I like Washington State in this game. It's more than a lean because I actually got it in my column. To explain the thing with the line, I think this is an objectively fair line, to be honest. My adjusted line actually is exactly pick 'em, which my system usually doesn't spit out the 0.0, but I got it in this one. So my system says it's a coin flip. I think it's a good matchup for Washington State. The teams that have given Washington problems this year are the teams that can defend the pass. Washington now is one of the most, since DeBoer took over this season, they're one of the most pass-happy teams in the entire nation. And where they really kill you is they get all the completions. And then their receivers, it turns out that they're good. Last season, no one could get them the ball, so we just didn't know. But this year, when Penix hits them on the hands in space, or when they got to step on someone, you see all these yak yards. The teams that can prevent those short completions from turning into yak opportunities, those are the teams that can completely discombobulate the Washington offense, because Washington can't run. They don't want to, and they're not great at it either. On the other side, it's sort of like I was talking about with the Oregon defense. Washington's defense can't stop anybody. The only thing that Washington's defense is okay at is generating pressure. So their pass rush is pretty decent, but Washington State has been okay at protecting their quarterback, Cam Ward, this year. Washington State also, while they pass a lot, them in Washington, they pass at an analogous rate. So you're going to see a ton of passes. Washington State is the way better running team when they do hand the ball off. Nakia Watson has been very good for them. Even though he missed time, his stats are still sterling. He's been doing a good job. I really like the Washington State defense. I think that's where the difference is here. And again, the Washington State offense, they're a very efficient unit with the short throwing game and then the rushing game. I don't see how Washington is going to force Wazoo to punt in this game. So I'm going to take Wazoo in the, to pull the very small upset. Give me the money line on that one. Last thing is Washington's 2-2 on the road this year. So it just seems like not the best scenario for Washington. If we have any, okay, we got a few listener questions to get to before we go out the door, Mike. Julio VS asks us, can USF score 24 at home against UCF? I'll go first. I don't think so. No. USF is down to the guy that was supposed to be like their fifth string quarterback, because the first couple guys got injured. Cade Fortin had transferred in the offseason, and there was another guy, something happened with him, but like, this is the guy that was a fifth string quarterback is now playing out the string for them. USF can run a little bit, but that's all that they can do. And UCF, they're going to run. So the clock will keep going, whatever. UCF's defense is pretty solid. I don't think so. Mike, you have any thoughts?
No, I don't think so either. So I assume he's talking about the over, which is 67.5. I would take the under there, and I don't think South Florida is going to put up a lot of points here. No.
Tar Heels 13 asks us any easy teasers you are looking at this week. I never do teasers. Mike, do you have a teaser?
I don't do teasers either. I used to, but they don't really on Main Street apps. They don't really do a lot of teasers. There's parlays like crazy, but I mean, if you want to do a teaser, then take my two. Take my two locks, Iowa State and LSU, and do a two-teamer on that, but I don't do teasers either.
Well, Iowa State ain't losing by they're not going to lose by.
On a two-team, what do you get? 6, so it's 16.
Matt Campbell since year 2, I just remember that Matt Campbell since year 2, he's only lost by 17 points once, and that was that weird game against Louisiana, that opener where there was the multiple special teams touchdowns by Louisiana. Outside of that, he has not lost by 17, and he's definitely never lost by more than that. So, I suppose that would be a good teaser scenario this week. Next one, Dan Chavis asked us, what are some lesser games that you feel confident in? The ones for me would be, I suppose by lesser games, he just means ones like that we haven't hit. I like Marshall this week against Georgia State. Georgia State, I think that they run at a higher rate than any non-option team in America, because Danny Granger, their quarterback, his play has regressed this year. Well, what you need to shut down their offense is only one thing. It's an awesome run defense. Marshall has got that. They also have a really good pass defense, so it's a bad scenario whenever Georgia State has to throw it. But Marshall's going to completely wipe out that one-handed offense for Georgia State. And then meanwhile, Rasheen Ali came back last week, the preseason All-American running back for Marshall, who hadn't played yet this year. And he had like 15 or 16 carries. So looks like he's going to be good going forward. That would be one of them that I would point to in that. Next one is Mike Hughes. I'm going to ask us, do you guys like UCF to cover 19.5 in the war on I-4? Can USF have another dead cap bounce cover. Farrell, I'll let you take this one because we sort of started to touch.
UCF should drill them. And back to, a couple of games, I do like Syracuse. I think they're laying 11 against BC. The BC team I saw last week against Notre Dame was just abysmal. So take Syracuse in that rivalry game. And then take Tennessee. They're laying 14 at Vandy. Everybody's hot on Vandy. People are forgetting that this is still a top 10 team for the Vols. So take the Vols to lay 14 there. And that's kind of it. I mean, yeah, UCF's going to drill them. They're going at 19.5. Take UCF to cover that. Take the under because I think they're going to win like maybe 40-3, but it's going to be ugly.
And Mike, would you one time out the door refresh for people that some of the prop angles you like today, and then your best bets one more time for the people that didn't hear them before?
Yeah, so the props. Well, the one I didn't talk about, Chase Brown, is 144.5 rushing yards. Take the over against Northwestern. They're going to just ride Chase Brown in this game. Pat Fitzgerald is going to try to make it slow and ugly, and it's definitely going to be a run-oriented football game. So it's a high number, but he's going to go over that. And the other one that I mentioned all the other ones. So I got Caleb Williams over 27.5 rushing yards, JJ McCarthy under 11.5 rushing yards, Deuce Vaughn over 116.5 rushing yards. And the locks, Iowa State, LSU.
Okay, so I promised a parlay and then my best bet by the end of the episode. Here's my parlay. Yeah. That guy wanted a 4-team parlay. How about this? How about I double it for you? We're gonna go 8-team parlay here because I want to juice up the odds. This 8-team parlay, money line parlay, would pay $586.26 off a $25 bet. So here you go. Money lines of James Madison against Coastal. Coastal doesn't have Grayson McCall anymore, and James Madison shuts down the run game. So Coastal's in some trouble today. Marshall against Georgia State. We just talked about that. South Alabama against Old Dominion. Old Dominion has been way beyond in the tank ever since Zach Kuntz and Allie Jennings got injured for the season. So South Alabama is going to roll in that one. Then an underdog one with Oregon State at home. We talked about that one a little bit before. Then another big favorite money line, UAB at Louisiana Tech. UAB has an awesome pass defense and an awesome secondary. Both are one of the best in the G5. Louisiana Tech needs to throw the ball to score. Then I'm taking the Notre Dame money line. We're going to juice it up a little bit, plus 162, 170, somewhere in that range. Then I'm going to take the small money line underdog in Washington State. And the last one I'm going to do is Middle Tennessee, just to juice it up against Florida International. Florida International can't defend the pass, and that's all Middle Tennessee does. And Middle Tennessee has a good run defense as well. So I think they're going to shut down FIU's run game. So $25 to win 586 or something like that. That's mine. And then my favorite bet of the week would probably be I do like that Marshall one quite a bit, to be honest. And then I guess Notre Dame too. Maybe Marshall and Notre Dame. I also like Washington State. So those would be my three, just so I can get in one more than Farrell had. Farrell, any last thoughts before we let the folks go?
No, I think it's going to be a fun day. The Ohio State Michigan game, man, I just can't wait. It's going to be, either way, Michigan's out of the playoff, and they're going to be talked about being overrated because their schedule sucks. Or Ryan Day is going to be on the most ridiculous hot seat you're ever going to hear about, ever.
I'm just seeing up there that Ohio State's now running onto the field. So about 27 minutes to go until that one, which means that Mike and I are out of time. We want to thank again our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. Take advantage of their special offer today and be sure to use our promo code CFB Pros with a minimum $5 deposit when signing up for a new account for your free $50 bet. And the link to that is in the show notes and above or below me somewhere. For Mike Farrell, I am Thor Nystrom. For Betting Pros, good luck with your bets today and enjoy another glorious college football Saturday.